Alright, so we know that horror games are special. They're not just about playing, they're about feeling the tension, the fear, the moments when you don't even want to move forward but have to. Some games do this better than others, sticking with you long after you've turned them off. Today we're looking at 10 of the scariest games you absolutely need to play. So let's get into it.
Goodbye, cruel world. The final curtain is calling and there's no time for an encore.
If you're looking for a game that will completely break you psychologically, Visage is it. This indie horror gem is heavily inspired by PT, and it takes place inside an unsettling, cursed house filled with terrifying spirits and gruesome past events. Unlike many horror games that rely on cheap jump scares, Visage builds an atmosphere of pure dread. The house constantly shifts, lights flicker at the worst times, and you never know when you're truly alone. Your only tools? A lighter, a few candles, and your sanity, which is constantly slipping away. The game punishes you for staying in the dark too long, making paranoia a constant companion. Each chapter follows a tragic story of a former resident, unfolding a slow psychological descent into madness. If you love horror that sticks with you long after you turn off the screen, Visage will leave a mark on your soul. Just don't play it alone at night. If you thought the original Outlast was terrifying, then Outlast 2 is next level nightmare fuel. This time you play as Blake Langerman, a journalist investigating a murder in the middle of the Arizona desert. But soon you and your wife get separated and you find yourself trapped in a remote village run by a deranged cult. From the very first moment, the game throws intense, relentless horror at you. Whether it's being chased by machete-wielding maniacs or running for your life through endless cornfields. There's no combat here. Your only options are to run, hide, or die. The tension never lets up, and the game constantly messes with your mind, throwing hallucinations, disturbing religious imagery, and unsettling flashbacks into the mix. And just when you think you have a moment to breathe, boom! Another blood-soaked nightmare begins. If you want horror that makes your heart race and palms sweat, Outlast 2 delivers. The Blair Witch movie redefined found footage horror, and its game adaptation takes that same terrifying atmosphere and drags you deep into the Black Hills forest. You play as Ellis, a former cop, searching for a missing boy. But of course, nothing is as simple as it seems. The deeper you go into the woods, the more reality itself starts to twist and warp around you. You hear voices, you see things that shouldn't be there, and worst of all, you never feel alone. Your only real ally is Bullet, your loyal dog, who serves as both a companion and a survival tool. But as the forest becomes darker and the supernatural Blair Witch presence grows stronger, you start to question what's real and what's in your head. With psychological horror, an overwhelming sense of isolation, and an ending that will leave you shaken, Blair Witch isn't just scary, it's deeply unsettling. When it comes to survival horror, The Evil Within 2 stands out as one of the most disturbing and visually horrifying games out there. You play as Sebastian Castellanos, a detective who must enter a twisted, nightmarish world called STEM to rescue his daughter. But this isn't just any horror world, it's a place where reality is constantly shifting, where grotesque monsters roam, and where your worst nightmares come to life. From a deranged serial killer turning victims into grotesque art to horrific creatures that feel ripped straight from your worst dreams, The Evil Within 2 keeps you on edge at all times. Unlike many horror games, this one lets you fight back, but ammo is scarce and stealth is often your best option. With intense psychological horror, unpredictable scares, and some of the most horrifying enemy designs in gaming, this game will leave you questioning what's real and what's just a waking nightmare.
You gotta be kidding me.
From the creators of Until Dawn, The Quarry is a cinematic horror game that plays like a love letter to classic slasher films. You control a group of camp counselors who decide to stay one extra night at Hackett's Quarry. And, as you can guess, bad things start happening. From mysterious creatures lurking in the woods to a family with dark secrets, the game constantly keeps you guessing about what's really going on. Every choice you make matters. Who lives, who dies, it's all in your hands. The game features Hollywood-level performances from actors like David Arquette and Ted Raimi, adding to the immersion. While the Quarry doesn't rely on traditional horror mechanics like combat or resource management, it delivers tense decision-making, brutal deaths, and jump scares that will keep you glued to the screen. If you love games that make you feel like you're starring in your own personal horror movie, this one's for you.
Not now. Come on!
One of the most legendary psychological horror games of all time is returned in a terrifying modern remake, and if you haven't played Silent Hill 2, you definitely should. This isn't just a horror game, it's a deep emotional journey into fear, guilt, and regret. You play as James Sunderland, who receives a letter from his dead wife, calling him back to the nightmare town of Silent Hill. What follows is a descent into pure madness. The town shifts between a hauntingly empty fog-covered ruin and a rusted, blood-soaked nightmare world. The creatures here aren't just scary, they represent James's darkest emotions. And then, of course, there's Pyramid Head, one of the most iconic horror monsters ever, stalking James like a living nightmare. With its disturbing story, eerie atmosphere, and terrifying psychological horror, this remake is set to bring new nightmares to life. Until Dawn is the ultimate interactive horror movie where your choices determine who survives and who becomes the next victim. You control a group of friends staying at a remote mountain lodge, but things quickly take a dark turn when they realize something horrific is hunting them. What makes Until Dawn so terrifying isn't just the jump scares, it's the constant sense of paranoia. Every decision, big or small, affects the story. Will you investigate that creepy noise? Will you save a friend or save yourself? The game plays with your expectations, tricking you into making the wrong choices, and with the remake bringing next-gen visuals and improved gameplay, this will be the best way to experience one of the scariest story-driven horror games ever made. There's something uniquely terrifying about isolation, and Still Wakes the Deep taps into that perfectly. Set on a remote oil rig in the North Sea, this game traps you in the middle of a brutal storm with something unnatural and horrifying stalking you through the dark, claustrophobic corridors. You play as an oil rig worker with no weapons, no hope of escape, and nowhere to hide. The only way to survive? Run, climb, and find a way through the flooding, collapsing structure, all while avoiding the horrifying creature hunting you down. With stunning visuals, immersive first-person gameplay, and an overwhelming sense of dread, Still Wakes the Deep is shaping up to be one of the most intense horror games in recent years. If you love games where you feel completely helpless, this one will keep you on edge from start to finish.
Oh, thank Christ. Here it is.
The Fatal Frame series is legendary in horror gaming, and Maiden of Blackwater brings its terrifying ghost hunting gameplay to modern platforms. Unlike most horror games, here you don't use guns or melee weapons. Your only defense is the camera obscura, a special camera that can capture and exorcise spirits. Set on the haunted Mount Hikami, the game follows three protagonists investigating the mysteries of the mountain's tragic past, but the deeper they go, the more cursed and horrifying their journey becomes. The ghosts in Fatal Frame aren't just spooky, they feel uncomfortably real, appearing out of nowhere and lunging straight at you. The game's dark atmosphere, eerie sound design, and chilling story make it one of the scariest supernatural horror games out there. If you want a game where you're constantly afraid to turn the next corner, this one will haunt you. Resident Evil 7 brought survival horror back to its terrifying roots, and honestly, this game is horrifying. Ditching the action-heavy style of previous games, RE7 puts you in the shoes of Ethan Winters, a regular guy searching for his missing wife. His search leads him to the Baker family's creepy, rotting plantation house, and from the moment you step inside, you realize something is deeply wrong. The Bakers aren't your typical zombies or monsters, they're something far worse. They talk, they taunt you, and they feel inhumanly unstoppable. The game's first-person perspective makes every encounter feel personal and terrifying. The sound design, atmosphere, and gruesome horror elements make Resident Evil 7 one of the scariest games ever made. If you want a horror game that will keep you on edge for every second, this one's a must-play. And that's it. 10 of the scariest horror games you need to experience. Which one creeped you out the most? Or is there another terrifying game you think deserves to be on the list? Let me know in the comments. And if you love horror games, make sure to subscribe for more spooky content. Thanks for watching and good luck sleeping tonight.